Welcome back to Royals Review podcast. As ever, I'm your host, Dan Worth, and joined by Jimmy. We come here fresh off the back of a 1-1 draw against Stevenage, an away point. Jim and I both there. Jim, give us your thoughts, mate.
Yeah, it was a good away day. First time for me in Stevenage ever. Yeah, I know you've been before, so I had a bit of the lowdown on what it's like. But it was a classic Reading away day. I think I had a good time. I'm sure you had a good time. You looked like you were having a good time.
Yep, I was.
But yeah, I don't think I'll be running back to Stevenage for anything other than another Reading away day anytime soon. I don't think.
Yeah, I think I probably agree. It's certainly not on the short list of wedding venues or anything like that. 30th birthday venues would probably steer clear of Stevenage. We did frequent a pub for a substantial amount of time on Saturday, which all I can say was very cheap to drink in. So I mean that's definitely not a bad thing. But
Yeah,
it wasn't the loveliest place I've ever been. Right, let's talk about the football then, because it's actually been quite divisive on social media as to how Reading performed in the 1-1 draw over Stevenage. Um, Obviously, Reading went 1-0 down in the 29th minute um, after what looked to me like a blatant foul on Garcia. But let's not waste too much time talking about the ref because
yeah,
it was absolutely terrible. And then in the second half, we looked a completely different team. I think we piled the pressure on, and Harvey Nibbs got the equaliser in the 82nd minute. What did you make of Reading's performance on the whole?
yeah. I am going to mention the ref because I never really complain about refs. But honestly, straight trash. That ref was terrible. So many mistakes from a Stevenage fan point of view and a Reading fan point of view.
Mm.
Didn't let the game just flow. It was so start and stop. Yeah, I think it was driving everyone up the wall. Um, Probably by the 20th minute. But but yeah, over to the actual game. Yeah, I mean, look, it was good to come from behind and salvage something on the road, given our terrible away form and away record. But I mean, ultimately, I do think we were good enough to actually pick up 3 points there and yeah, walk away with the win. Um, so yeah, a little bit frustrating. I know, well, from what I've seen on X, um, most fans are sort of in two minds. You know, some are really happy that we've managed to pick up something on the road. Others are, yeah, disappointed that we didn't get 3 points. I thought we were good enough to take 3 points. I know you've probably got the stats, but we had a lot of shots on target, if I remember correctly.
Mm. Yeah, we had 20 shots, sorry, and 9 on target, I think, which is the most we've had on target this season. In fact, I think someone else tweeted that it's the most we've had away from home for a very, very long time.
Yeah,
It was the third highest XG we've had this season. Um, and I mean, just on the eye test, we had enough chances to win that game. Like the one that springs to mind is the one where Harvey Nibbs smashed it over the bar. Well, it's so hard to see from where we were sat, but it looked like a relatively similar chance to the one he scored,
mhm.
maybe a little bit further out, but he obviously blasted that over. Their keeper made a couple of good saves, or they looked like good saves. I don't know whether they were just hit directly at him, but it looked like he'd made a couple of good saves from where we were sitting. So I
Yeah,
think we
their
can be
keeper
a
was
bit
good.
aggrieved.
To be fair, given the amount of stick that he was getting
Yeah.
from us as well in the first half, I actually thought that their keeper was probably one of the better players across both teams.
Yeah, he did get the man of the match award from who scored, but also from the Stevenage sponsors. So yeah, I do kind of agree. He was pretty good. Let's talk then a little bit. Obviously, Sam Smith, there was question marks as to whether he'd be involved. Like
Yeah,
the realists that we are, we sort of knew he wouldn't be, and he obviously wasn't, which then meant that Harvey Nibbs started for Reading in the centre forward striker role. How much do you think we missed Smith in that first half, or do you think Nibbs did a good job?
I think we missed Smith massively,
Mm,
and I also think the fact that Nibs started up top instead of Wareham shows that Selez also thinks we're missing some sort of, well, maybe some physicality, some height up top, a target to aim at. And I think that's fair as well, because, we saw how it was against Stockport in terms of the wingers and in terms of like bringing other forward positions into play. And yeah, I mean, it was terrible really until they brought on Kelvin against Stockport. And I thought it was pretty similar really against Stevenage in terms of the wingers. Just going back to your point about how do you think Nibs did he fill in well? I thought he did. But yeah, in terms of how Campbell played, in terms of how Kamara played, which I'm sure we'll come on to, yeah, I think it was really clear to see just how much we miss Smith and what he does off the ball, and not just goals.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I said this to you about a million times on Saturday, but obviously Harvey Nibs was coming up against Piergiani, who is probably the best header of the ball in the league. I mean, to me, that's undoubted. So it's not an easy task when you're getting balls lumped to you, coming up against like someone like Piergiani, who does win loads of headers. I think he won I don't even have it here, but he won 8 in a game. Like it's just it's wild. But he did still look a little bit threatening when he had the ball at his feet. But I completely agree with you that we looked better when we shifted. Basically, as in, I think we looked better in the second half. But let's talk about it then, because again, someone who's been very divisive on X this week, and maybe throughout the rest of the season, to be fair, is Chem Campbell. I was not overly impressed with him. I'll be completely honest. I know he's done very well from the goal, and I'm not suggesting that he was terrible. I just thought that, to be fair, him and Kamara were quite ineffective. But I don't think either of them were exuding confidence, and they weren't really having any success taking players on, which is really what you want your wide men to be doing, particularly when you've got Nibs there ready and waiting for the cutbacks and things. So, yeah, I thought they were both disappointing. What did you make of the wingers?
Yeah, mate, exactly the same, to be honest. I thought, yeah, they were largely ineffective throughout the whole game, really. I know Kamara hasn't really been playing too much recently, and Campbell obviously has only really started to start since Smith and Kelvin picked up injuries. But yeah, they weren't great. And I thought this when Campbell scored his 2 goals against Burton as well. Ultimately, he scored 2 goals, which is huge. But besides that, he really was ineffective. However, I've got to praise his graft for the equaliser. He took on his man, he got round him, and then he cut it back for Nibs, which got us a point in the end. But we just need to see that so much more from him throughout in every game, really, not just throughout the season. We need to see that more frequently, because that's something that we're really missing in this side. Just a bit of consistency from our wingers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it doesn't help that they're chopping and changing basically every week and all that kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't do anyone any favors. But thankfully for those wingers, you have Harvey Nibs there, who just works his socks off in all aspects of the game. I was actually thinking this morning when I was preparing for this, I actually don't really remember the last player that worked. Well, I don't really remember who else I'd put in the category of hardworking, similar to Harvey Nibs. Like, he works so hard. He must cover so much ground. I think Savage covers loads of ground too. But yeah, I might actually put that out as a tweet. Like, which players that have played for Reading do you think can be considered hardworking and maybe even compete with Harvey Nibs as to how much ground they cover and how intense they are? Because I think he's seriously up there.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't just think, I think it's very easy to, given how lazy or certain players, their work rate was terrible in the Championship. Zhao, for example. I don't know who else.
Tom
Ince. Their work rate wasn't great. So I think it's something that's sort of top of a lot of Reading fans' mind and like what they pick up on quite easily now. But that's not to say that I do think we've got some real hard workers in this team. A lot of them. I think it's more than just Nibs and Savage, but no, that's a really good point. They do work really hard.
Yeah, no, I agree, and we've said before, and I still believe this, particularly at this level, working hard goes such a long way. Like, I'd much rather someone who's running all over the shop, putting in tackles left, right, and centre, than someone who's like someone like Zhao, who is like top quality, but like only on the rare occasion. Like, I'd much rather players that are going all out. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I don't think you can be too judgmental of some performances when you can tell the players are giving everything.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
why I do think that this is I think it's a good point. Like, I think, okay, yeah, we probably could have and probably should have won the game, but when you go 1-0 down, like, to claw back anything is pretty good, and the players fought for it and did deserve more. But I think we leave with a point gained rather than two lost.
yeah.
Um, right, we've got loads of questions, so I'll quickly touch on a couple of other things. One of the questions is about Andre Garcia, so I'll leave him. But I really just wanted to mention Dorset. I thought he looked really good when he came on. Any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, in terms of the defence, there's not really too much to say about it from the Stevenage game. I thought it was a pretty average performance from them. I'm sure they've moved on from that match already and they're thinking about the next one. But yeah, it was good to see Dorset make a return. I thought he did well when he came on. You know, you could immediately see the benefits of having someone a little bit more physical than Garcia. Not to say that I don't think Garcia dropped straight away, because I think there's a lot that Garcia also adds that Dorset doesn't necessarily have either. The more sort of technical side to it all. But in terms of defending, and yeah, being matched up against some of the other wingers in this league, yeah, it's great to have Dorset back. You know, we need as much depth as we can, given how threadbare our squad is. So yeah, it's good to have him back.
Yeah, I fully agree. I fully agree, and I don't think that it's necessarily a dig at Garcia,
No, not at all.
but he was getting targeted, shall we say?
Yeah,
Like, basically everything that it felt like everything that Stevenage were doing was to get at him and to get down his side. And I think maybe Ruben was like, well, we kind of need someone a little bit stronger there. Otherwise, if we go 2-0 down, the game's probably gone.
yeah,
And we don't really praise substitutions that often. So I think this one was the correct decision from Ruben. And well, in my eyes, paid off.
yeah.
Um, 5 questions then. So thanks very much to everyone who sent in questions. We love hearing them. A
Hmm.
couple silly ones, couple serious ones. Um, First one, I feel like we've touched on this a few times now, and obviously this is very hypothetical because we have no idea what position Reading will be in the transfer window in January, in summer, in 10 years from now, we still might be in an embargo. But what do you think Reading, or who do you think, sorry, Reading should prioritise in the transfer window? I guess positions will do here because otherwise we could be here all day.
Yeah, it's crazy. As soon as these questions around transfer windows start popping up, you realise how we're still stuck with Dai Young in charge and how uncertain the future is. But yeah, like you said, in an ideal world, I think the most important position would be to sign a right back, and that is because not sure how Andy Yeardom's going to be when he comes back. If he comes back from his injury, you know, he's probably going to be a shadow of the player that he was previously. I already thought he was sort of, you know, toning it down a bit. He wasn't getting any better. And Sellers is obviously not certain on Abrafa. And again, Abrafa has his injury issues as well. But the main point is, I'd love to just see Michael Craig back in midfield. I think he's done a real good job at right back. I think he would do an even better job in midfield. That gives us a chance to, you know, for Wing to maybe push a little bit further forward. We all know how good he is in front of goal. And also, it would give us an option to play Ben Elliott on the wing. It's not ideal. I don't particularly like Ben Elliott being played on the wing. I think he's much more effective in midfield. But you know, he's played there numerous times before, and it's an area which we need to sort out. So yeah, I think right back is most important. But besides that, I'd say a winger that is proven, someone that can sort of fill the void that's been left by Kelvin for the next 3 months. And yeah, I mean, if Smith's out as well, that's two sort of big goal scorers for this side missing. So I think we do need someone that is perhaps a little bit more experienced, that can almost guarantee us some goals from the wing.
Yeah, I agree. It's a hard question, right? Because realistically, we kind of need a player in every position. That's how thin we are. I'd say like there are a few positions where we don't need anyone, but we are playing academy players and people out of position. Like ideally, we could make quite a few transfers.
Yeah.
I do agree with the wingers. I still feel like we haven't really replaced Femi Aziz. I know Chem Campbell was sort of that, but I don't know. I don't think they're comparable at the moment. And maybe Campbell just needs a bit more time, and he can become that. But I think I'd probably start there if I was looking at priorities.
Yeah.
Second question is, when will the inaugural Royals Review podcast social be? Well, that's a good question. Currently, we're getting 15 or so views on YouTube, so maybe the 15 of us can go and get a beer around Christmas time. But I would say the first social will be in the middle of May at the Star Pub in Wembley Way when Reading are about to take on whoever they may take on in the playoff final this season. I don't know if you have anything better to say on that, but
that sounds
we
good
have
to
socials
me.
every week, mate. We have socials all the time.
Yeah, I would be more than happy with a little social before the playoff final if that was to happen.
It could be good. Keep your fingers crossed. Right, actually, I feel like you've answered this question already. But the question is, we can revisit very briefly. Would you like to see Craig back in centre midfield and make do with someone else at right back?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think eventually having Craig back in midfield is the ideal situation, and I'm sure that's what Sellers has in mind. But I think Craig is good enough for right back. He's definitely got mistakes in him, but for a player to sort of seamlessly fit into that right back position and then like do pretty much the job that he's asked, I think that's, I mean, what more do you want? You know, he's developing as a player. I think the sort of, I guess, the characteristics of like a fullback and a defensively minded midfielder aren't too dissimilar. So I'm sure he's like improving his game even when he's back in midfield by playing in this position anyway. So yeah, I mean, yeah, ultimately it'd be good to have Craig back in midfield, but I don't think we have a better option at right back, and I think he's doing more than good.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, we saw Ahmed come on in the second half against Stevenage, and I thought he looked okay. Like he looked fine. I don't really think there's enough of a sample size there to like make any comment on how good he is, which actually does bring us on to the next question. But yeah, Craig's done a great job at right back, I think. So I would probably say no, as in I want him to play right back whilst he's the best right back we've got, if that makes sense. But yeah, obviously I would love to see him back in midfield once we are restored with the likes of Yiadom or any other options we might bring in. But yeah, we mentioned Ahmed there. The next question is, do you think he's a better all-round player than Garcia?
Who, Ahmed?
Yeah.
I mean, I've literally seen Ahmed, I think, on one occasion, and that was against Stevenage. So I can't really answer it. But I think Garcia has shown that he's, and I know we touched on it either on the last podcast or the one before that, the fact that like people don't even know what Garcia's best position is. And I think that sort of speaks volumes, really. You know, he's good enough to have a future in numerous positions. I think he really reminds me of Omar Richards. Like going forward, Omar Richards I thought was really good. And when he getting towards the final third, like he was so like technical and his dribbling and the ball control is well, compared to Dorset, it's a lot better. So I think, yeah, Garcia's shown that he's got quite a lot in his locker. Not that he's got a lot of work to do, of course, but I mean, I've only seen a cameo appearance from Ahmed, but like you said, he looked pretty good when he came on. In fact, I think he nearly popped up with an assist towards the end as well. It looked like he created quite a good chance.
He did.
Which would have been good if it was converted. But yeah, look, I think it just sort of shows the deal with the academy and how much we're currently relying on them, and just the quality that's coming out of the academy. More so this season because we've all seen a lot of the academy players start for the first team.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, to be honest, mate. I think Ahmed was quite impressive, but I don't really feel comfortable commenting, to be honest, because I don't think I've seen enough of him to formulate a full opinion. And Garcia has been very impressive. I appreciate that he gets targeted with balls in the air and he might not win all of them, but he does look good with the ball at his feet. And I was actually really hoping that when Ruben brought on Dorset on Saturday, that he was going to bring him on for Kamara and we might see Garcia in the left wing role. I was really keen for that, but we didn't get to see that. And I'm sure Sellers is much smarter than me and knows what he's doing, so maybe it was the right decision. But I would potentially be excited to see him get a go a bit further forward because I think he'd probably be quite good. Last question then. Do you think the club should focus on bringing in more experienced senior players when we're allowed to buy players, or should we continue to focus on transitioning academy players into the first team like we're doing now?
I think this is a really hard one because I think the academy players have all done a pretty decent job, the ones that have come in and are starting regularly. But I do think, like I mentioned, with bringing in an experienced winger that is almost proven to score goals, I do think that's needed. On the wing and for a right back as well, the other position that I mentioned. But I'm very keen for Sellers to sort of keep developing the academy. There's so much value for the club, both on the pitch and financially, and I think that's just such an important aspect of where we're at as a club at the moment. We can't. I think we have to look at it as these players are probably only going to be here for a couple of years, regardless. They don't want to be stuck. If they're better than League One, they'll be out of here. So I do think we need to sort of look at it from that perspective as well. But yeah, I do think we do need to bring a few experienced players. I'm not saying old players. I'm just saying players that have a track record of being able to produce in this league, that can sort of hit the ground running.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that then, because that's sort of what I was thinking, is that I don't really like when Reading specifically, because I don't really care about any other teams, to be perfectly honest, but when Reading specifically buy players who are 34 but come from a championship team or a Prem team, I think that the amount of times that works is so small compared to the amount of times it's terrible. So I think experienced in terms of maybe at that level, as in maybe some players who have lots of League One experience and have proven themselves at that level. But I don't necessarily think we should be signing players by age
in another league. Yeah.
If that makes sense, because I don't think the issue here is we should get older players and have less younger players.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. If you think Jeff Hendrick was shit, mate, you can just say it. We're all friends.
Mate, yeah, he wasn't great. He was not great. I mean, there's so many that I can think of.
An example of what you are alluding to, though, right? Just because they've done it in a bigger league, a better league, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have the desired impact for Reading.
And it's no hate on Jeff Hendrick. There's plenty of others that fall into that. I think Jordan Much, he was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Drinkwater, not terrible, but like, take him or leave him. There's plenty of players that fall into that category. I'm sure people can tell me in the comments of who they think that we've maybe signed who have been quite disappointing. I mean, none more so than Royston Drenthe comes with all of that experience at Real Madrid and everywhere else, and is one of the worst players that Reading have ever had. But at this point, really rubbish answer to this question, but I just hope we can get anyone in, really.
Same.
Just bulk out the squad, because as we're already seeing, it only takes one or two injuries for us to be clutching at straws and having to play players out of position, which is just not ideal, particularly with the amount of games that we have to play in League One and all the other cups and things we're in. And also if we're going to push up.
This reminds me as well, on the trip to Stevenage, there was a question that I don't think we ever got round to answering around, can we bring a player in, like right now? And over the sort of cup break, I'll put it, there we saw the mutual contract termination of Joko Andersson, the goalkeeper, and there was a lot of talk about whether that is just purely down to, preferences from the player, whether it's something financial from us, or whether it's freeing up a spot in the squad that we have a lot of. We've got a lot of keepers at the moment, to potentially sign, a position that we need to fill, whether it's a forward or a right back, like we've spoken about earlier. So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear people's thoughts on that as well. So let us know in the replies to this. I think we can, even though we're under an embargo. Obviously, with the whole situation that's going on, I haven't actually got a clue if we really can. But by law, or by the regulations of the EFL, I'm pretty sure we can sign a player if the squad is under 23 man size.
I think so.
I'm not
certain on that.
Let us know. Let us know in the comments, in the replies, what you would do if you would sign a winger or a right back. I'll be keen to sort of see what people are saying about that situation. I know it's a week or so ago now, but it was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Let us know. Plenty of questions that we've asked back now. So if you're watching, let us know your thoughts in the comments. That'll do for today, I think. Obviously, international break now, Jim, so a week off.
Yeah.
But I'll catch you when we're back. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. Please do like, follow, subscribe, comment, all the fun stuff. And we'll see you next time. Until then, come on, you are.